Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Rexfield Investigates podcast, where we do what we say. We investigate. Today, I have Anna Hulst, who is one of our longtime investigators with Rexfield. She's been here for almost 10 years, and I think over 10 years.
Little.
Anna, yep. Anna, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Cool, cool. So you want to go ahead and give a little bit of your background, kind of your title here with Rexfield, and some of the things that you've been doing over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so I'm one of the lead investigator with Rexfield. I've been with Rexfield for a little over 10 years. Worked a lot of cases, a lot of different cases, but I'd say the majority of the cases I run are harassment related, defamation, cyber stalking, scams, fraud, cyber scams, crypto scams. And my specialty lies in identifying anonymous users behind the internet. So a lot of people seem to think that if you use a VPN or a different fake profile, or you use fake email addresses, etc., that you're anonymous. But that's not the case. Everything leaves digital
Mhm.
traces. It's our job to find those traces.
And that's pretty interesting because yeah, like you nailed it. A lot of people are under the mindset that if you leave something on the internet, if you hide your tracks, they think that that's kind of it, that you can't find them.
Hmm.
So when it comes to like unmasking the attackers, what are some of the techniques that you deploy? I mean, do you like install computer viruses on their computer? Because I know that's usually one of the ones that a lot of people say. Or
Yeah.
like, are you keeping it within like legal parameters? Like, what's some of the ways that you do that?
Yeah, we have to keep it in legal parameters because majority of our clients take things to the police or to court. So all the evidence we find is fully legal and admissible. There are a couple of things that we do. We always start with open source intelligence to try to find anything we can. We have specialized tools that we use. When it comes to harassment cases, people use throwaway email addresses, phone numbers, fake profiles. They often set up fake phone numbers with spoofing apps. There's not much to find in open source intelligence. We often resort to social engineering, which the easiest way to explain that would be think of scammers, crypto scammers, or let's say romance scammers. I think that's what most people can imagine how that works, where romance scammers pose as a beautiful young woman and then engages with their victim. That's similar to what we do. We use pretext to engage with an anonymous individual, and that's how we track their digital traces. If there's a suspect, we try to rule them in or out, and we connect the dots, connect the traces, and that's how we usually find the evidence. Some cases are harder than others. Some people are more tech savvy. They know how to hide their trails and use VPNs, etc. It's rarely impossible to identify someone, but it does depend on the type of case and the type of person you're dealing with, whether you've identified someone within 24 to 48 hours, or it could take up to 3 months plus.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing a lot of people don't realize is that when doing a lot of these cases, it's not like something that you can magically like wave a wand and identify them tomorrow. Some cases that are very open and shut case or like where someone might make a mistake and will mess something up. Each case is very different. With the harassment cases, trying to build that profile and build that criminal case. And you nailed it. A lot of the ways that we do things, a lot of people, and like I can't tell you how many times I've been asked this, well, Ron, here, you hacking computers and stuff. It's like one, I would frankly love to, but because of how closely we work with law enforcement, we have to keep our noses clean and we have to keep everything legal. So that's kind of where your creativity comes in of being able to create those pretexts and very much emulate what the scammers are saying and create that story
Mhm.
where very much as you said with the romance scams, they'll tell that story to try and get somebody to believe what they're doing, whereas we'll use similar techniques and kind of create a different persona or like kind of create some of those stories, if you will, to make it enticing. Think back like over the last 10 years or so, can you think of a case and walk through the pretexts that was used to actually unmask the person, and then what did Rexfield do after that?
One of the cases I worked on was a case of online defamation where someone was a friend of our victim and pretended to also be targeted by the bad actor. She told our victim, like, I'll help you and I'll engage with the bad actor to gather information for you. The interesting thing was that at the end of the case, we identified her as the bad actor. So she was playing two roles. That is something that we unfortunately find on a regular basis, where it's someone, a trusted party of the victim, who you would never suspect is the perpetrator. She was very good at it because she would record her phone calls with the bad actor, but you would of course only hear her speak. And it sounded very real, and she would make up all these chat conversations that she would hand to our clients as part of her information gathering. But it was all fake. She was just on the phone with herself, and there was no one on the other end. That was a lengthy investigation, but eventually I posed as a what we call sock puppet, which is a fake persona, and we build a website around it and social media. So if someone would Google that person, it seemed like a legit person. Engaged over the course of a couple of weeks with her to win her trust, pretend that I was also an ex of the client. Eventually, she took the bait and I shared information with her, which she viewed and opened. And then I was able to match it with the suspect. Same device, same IP address.
That's cool. So you were able to have the device information for the suspect and then have the device information of the other one. And through comparing those two, you were able to identify and link them back as being the same person.
Yes.
Cool.
And that's the ideal outcome because you can that way bypass subpoenas. Whereas in some cases, we'll have to work with lawyers to issue subpoenas after we've traced an IP address. For example, if then there's no suspect, so you have an IP address and other information about the anonymous person, but you have no one to link it to, that's when you do need a subpoena. But we always try to avoid the need for subpoenas because that's where you telegraph your punches. You let them know that you are coming after them. Whereas if we can prove it's the suspect through our own investigation, they have no idea that they've been caught. So in some cases, it will go to trial and they perjure themselves because they don't know that there is evidence.
Yeah, and when you have somebody who's perjuring themselves and making it to where they don't realize they had been gotten, if that, it definitely makes a sweet case because it helps prove the case that they were intentionally trying to mask their identity. They didn't know what was happening, and when you catch them, it just makes it that much of a better victory, if you will, being able
Absolutely.
to kind of help the customer and the clients. And with the clients that we have that we work with, again, we work directly to try and build those pretexts, those discussions to try and engage back and forth for those cases. And especially with like harassment cases or defamation cases, it definitely makes it to where we could do a lot of positive for those people. In the short amount of time I've been here with Rexfield, a lot of the sentiment that people share is that we're kind of like a last resort,
Yeah.
where they're just trying to see what's happening, see what's going on, and they've gone to law enforcement, they've gone to legal, they've gone to this place, they've got to this place, and even before we get them, they're like 4 years in, where they're just so exhausted and worn down that it's like you can't help but try and help them out.
Especially when it comes to personal harassment. So of course you have the corporate defamation cases, etc. But there are generally less emotions involved with those ones compared to your next door neighbor experiencing harassment for 4 years. In some cases, it escalates to both digital harassment as well as physical stalking. Imagine if you have to deal with that day in, day out for years, you become fully paranoid and it impacts your sleep, your mental health, everything. It's not just doing our investigation in the background, but it's also sort of guiding them in their emotions and helping them. What we try to do is find answers for them to bring them that relief that they so much are seeking because they feel so desperate. Because, like I said, everyone thinks that you're anonymous on the internet, so how are they ever going to find out who is doing this to them? If we can provide those answers, that's very rewarding work to do.
Absolutely. I know some of the victims that we've worked with, they're absolutely terrified Like there's no other word to put other than just straight up terrified. We had one case come across our desk where people were threatening the victim and were sending pictures of dead cats and threatening to hurt her animals. And for somebody who's very caring and compassionate, like she was very worried about that.
Mhm.
We had another case. I know we had another case where someone thought they were being tracked by the cartel and they were worried for their personal safety and they kept threatening. They're like, "Hey, we're gonna come there. We're gonna kill your family." And in that case, they were receiving very graphic details and very graphic pictures of what they were going to do to the family. So they were one day away from checking into a hotel for the weekend just to try and figure it out because they had no idea what to do with those threats. And so many times people just want that relief and knowing that, hey, this is the emotional damage that's happening and it goes way far beyond just the financial problems. And it's usually trying to say, hey, what's going on? What's happening? We need some closure. We need some answers. And we've gone everywhere else to look for answers, and no one's helping us out. And no one's giving us those answers.
Often they've already been to the police because ideally they shouldn't have to pay services like ours if the police would be helping them for multiple reasons. Sometimes, quite often, the police doesn't help or doesn't know what to do. But one of the cases that I personally find hard but also rewarding to do is the sextortion cases with minors. There's an increasing rate of suicide amongst minors in mainly Western countries. There's so much shame involved that they often don't go to the parents and therefore often don't get help from the police or from us. So in those cases, the police will often help because it involves minors. The outcome is so tragic, whereas it could be easily solved. One of the things that I was hoping maybe we can do with this podcast as well is spread some light for parents on what the possibilities are in the field of sextortion to encourage your children to be open about it if something does happen because that's how they usually get help. Otherwise, they just feel lonely and scared. It might end in the worst case scenario.
A lot of parents need to understand and have that conversation is that there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of negative emotions that goes along with being a victim of sextortion. And yet here
Mhm.
in the West, it's especially shameful to be looking at porn, to take naked pictures and then post that online. Or people who are 13, 14, 15, they're still developing and they're still trying to understand like what group they're a part of. When this happens, being thrown out of their social groups, it's absolutely detrimental. Like it risks their perception, it risks them being mocked, it risks them being made fun of. For a lot of people who are that age, it's earth shattering. You're facing the risk of possibly having your pictures spread, and those are all the things that are going through this person's head trying to figure that out. Depending on the relationship with the parent, some parents may be very stern and be like, hey, you're going to get in trouble if you do these things. I know I've had to kind of take a step back and see how I parent and try to be more gentle. That's a big thing to understand is that you want to have those conversations with the kids early on. You don't want your teen to take their life as a result of this. It's absolutely horrible with what's going on.
You can see a pattern with the cases. You could see how comfortable the children were with their parents and would talk openly about what happened. Whereas if you read the stories about the victims have committed suicide, 9 out of 10 cases, the parents had no clue what was going on. And they would still have a good relationships with their kids. That was not the problem. There's so much shame involved from the victim side that they don't want to talk about it. And like you said, if you're that young, your whole life revolves around friends in high school. They're gonna spread your photos at the school and all your friends will see it. At that age, the worst thing that can
Hmm.
happen to you.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And when they're trying to navigate those feelings of shame, those uncomfortable emotions, it definitely gets hard because like, their emotions are so ramped up. For people who really struggle with their emotions, who struggle with their with feeling, that's something that a lot of teens and adolescents don't necessarily have the communications for that. And I know I've seen a similar phenomenon working with romance scam victims where a lot of times when I'm working with them, counseling them, it also gets to a point where I'm trying to help them navigate their own emotions for the family members that come forward, and where they have that open relationship, that open communication with their kids, they're able to understand and that kid feels safe. In the cases where kids didn't come forward, they didn't necessarily feel safe. And that's not judgment against the parent by any mean whatsoever. The child's experience was feeling unsafe within their body because they're feeling that high of an emotion. The only way they know to kind of get away from that pain and discomfort is to take their life, by being able to help be that emotional cushion with them and kind of say, hey, here's what you're experiencing. You're experiencing a lot of uncomfortable emotions. You're feeling a lot of shame, and that's the sense and experience in your body right now. And then
Mhm.
kind of walking them through how to just feel and sense their body and know that they're going to come out on the other side.
Yeah. And especially with the sextortion cases amongst minors, the majority of victims are boys,
Mm-hmm.
and by far the majority of suicide cases are boys. Generally speaking, more hard to talk about their feelings
Mm-hmm.
anyway.
Yep.
Than girls. There's a misconception about genders and cyber stalking, cyber harassment. A lot of people automatically assume that most victims are girls and women, whereas from the cases that I've dealt with, I'd say it's pretty 50-50. It's so different from real life stalking or harassment compared to cyber. Within 5 minutes, you can set something up and just make someone's life miserable. And it's just as easy for men and women to do, and for
Mm-hmm.
men and women to become victims.
And one thing that you mentioned, I really kind of want to echo, was you said that for a lot of men, being able to walk through their emotions and being able to explain it, that's very uncomfortable for a lot of men too. And like, I know for me, I've done a lot of research in mental health, a lot of work just learning my own emotions. And just from a personal anecdote there, emotions are not something that comes easy to me. It's something I very much had to work on. I remember like having a conversation with my parents at one point, and just kind of walking through just how some like stuff that I learned and everything. And my mom kind of had like a laugh and everything in a good way. And she's like, yeah, when it came to emotions, she's like, you absolutely did not learn that from me. And it was something where people don't understand that when it comes to working with the inner sensations of your body, we're never taught that. When doing a lot of the research with scam victims and kind of walking through some of just the training material I use to help teach people, we have a muscle that is our intraception muscle and our proprioception muscle. So, for example, if you look outside of your body and you're looking at like a wall, you're going to feel sensations, but that's going to be related to looking at something outside your body. If you reflect inside your body and focus on the muscles in your hand, for example, your hand is going to tingle and you're going to feel sensations in your hand. So, with that, looking outside your body and inside your body, those two things get. So, when I'm working with a victim, as you mentioned, who's extremely anxious, who's extremely paranoid, who is in the fight or flight response, their body is so ramped up that they're feeling physical discomfort. And because of that, they don't know how to walk through those sensations.
Mhm.
That's kind of where we come in, is that when we were able to help work through that with them, help kind of give them that closure when they've been looking for these answers all these times. So much of the work also includes just kind of being there for them and treating people like people. I know it sounds like such a foreign thing, but
Yeah.
treating humans as humans and kind of just knowing that, hey, we all have hard experiences, we all have difficult things that we're going through. What can you do to kind of help them through that?
And sometimes it's as simple as them knowing that someone believes them.
Hmm.
If it's a case where they've been dealing for a long time and they suspect someone who is, let's say, very well respected in the community and no one believes them, if they feel like someone finally does, that can already bring a sense of relief. Or with scammers victims, sometimes it's as simple as telling how many cases we deal with similar circumstances. Like you mentioned before, there's so much shame involved. Just hearing it's normal and happens to a lot of people, that can already bring a sense of relief.
People don't realize how far that goes. If I had a quarter for every time someone was like, I have this crazy story for you that I don't think that you'd ever heard of, it's like, hit me. Come on.
Yeah.
Give me your weirdest, craziest story that you think is going on, and I will tell you that no, that's actually accurate. Or like, with working with a romance scam victim, how they're like, well, we had this oil rig here and this thing here, this thing here. I'm like, okay, tell me the entire story. That person's experience is their experience. Whether you think it's real or not, it's their valid experience. And when you start discounting that, it takes away from them, and they're going to get very defensive and they're going to shut you off.
Like you said, hit me with your story, because if you've been in the field long enough, you've heard pretty much everything. And it's rare that someone calls us and we hear a news story. We hear them on almost a daily basis. For the person who's experiencing it and is in the middle of it, it's a totally different story. From outside, it's about keeping in mind those emotions that are involved with the actual person.
With those stories, yeah, it's something where that experience is very hard. And like we've had cases, there's been investigations that have been looked at where we literally have human trafficking victims who are stealing cryptocurrency from other victims who are being beaten to be doing other fraud. It's like we see so many different things that most people are not exposed to. And I know that I've had this exact same conversation with Steven, is that when it comes to like our normal in this field, when we're doing a lot of this stuff, like we were never really expecting to see that. A lot of us just never really had the skills to actually go and understand that these are the investigations that are here.
It's definitely an interesting field to work with. I'm unfortunately a lot less naive than when I started 10 years ago, and nothing surprises you anymore.
For better or for worse. So we are coming up here on time. So Anna, any last things you want to mention on the podcast before we bounce off? Any interesting things you're working on?
We're currently working on a couple of corporate fraud cases. I'm excited about this podcast. I'm happy to do a couple of episodes where we go in depth talking about a couple of cases that we're working on, to share more details so people have a better understanding of how things work. Some people who are going through the same thing, give them some ideas on how to handle it.
And that way we can tell them that our normal, which we think is not normal, is actually more their normal. So
Yeah,
to help bring some closure to them. So
that's a good way of putting it.
cool.
Yeah.
All right. That's it for the Rexfield Investigates podcast. Thank you everybody for listening. And Anna and Ronnie out. Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. If you like, make sure that you hit the like, the subscribe, or whatever you need to do on your favorite platform. If you want to reach out to us, go to rexfield.com. That's REXXFIELD.com. Thank you much. Take care. See you at next episode. Bye for now.